During my studies, I was incredibly interested in the process of learning, how to approach information learning, how to memorize the information for longer, how to effectively read books, and part of it was studying for exams. And along the way, I also watched some of my colleagues struggle with the approach to exams, and I thought that there are some beliefs, some myths in their thinking that stop them from succeeding, from getting that best grade. And in this video, I will share with you the top 3 myths that prevent people from obtaining the best grade. And at the end of this video, I'll also have some bonus for you, so make sure that you stick around till the end of the video. The first myth that stops people from obtaining the best possible grade from an exam is that they associate studying the subject with studying for an exam. So in other words, they think that if they know the subject well, they should get a good grade. And conversely, if someone who studied less, but this person obtained a better grade than they did, it's kind of unfair. And that comes to the belief that if you know the subject, you will get a good grade. And that's completely not true. Studying for an exam is an art on its own. It requires specific attitude, specific mindset, and also specific techniques that then get you to write the exam well and obtain a good grade. As an example, we could consider an exam from mathematical analysis. If you have a broad knowledge in mathematics, you may be able to solve all the tasks in the exam, but you may not be able to solve them in the prescribed time. Whereas if someone has not the knowledge but the skill to solve these tasks fast, they may be able to do all the tasks in the prescribed time and thus obtain a better grade than you. The second belief that holds students back from obtaining the best possible grade on an exam is the belief that the real exam requirements are given by the examiner. I will illustrate it by a short story. Back in the day, when my sister was studying economics, before one of her exams, the examiner told the students to read 3 books and learn these 3 books by heart because they're necessary for the exam. My sister, who was a very good student, took this advice to heart and got these 3 books, read them, and learned the information contained in them. But a different group of students took a little bit easier approach. So what they did was they took the exams from the previous years, did just them, and thought that it would be sufficient to pass the exam. In the end, my sister got a worse grade than those people who just did the past year's exam. And it's not the only story that I know about these cases. So what are the best sources of information on the exam requirements? In my opinion, the number 1 source on the exam requirements are the past exams, so the papers from the previous years. And sometimes the examiner can distribute such papers themselves. They can also send sample tasks to students, but sometimes these old papers are available through student sharing network. I hope that wherever you're studying, you are in a community of students that stays supportive of each other. So yeah, if you want to know what will be demanded from you during an exam, look at past year's papers. The second best source on the exam requirements are students who already has taken that exam. So if you have students that did the exam that you want to take, please go ask them what is required, what are the types of tasks that come up, and what is important to study for that exam, and maybe what these students regret not doing before taking that exam. The third source of information on the exam requirements is the course material itself. Most probably, during an exam, you won't be asked to do or say something that wasn't already present during the course. So make sure to review the tutorial exercises, the lecture material, and also learn who prepares the exam, because, well, the tasks from this person may probably be more similar to what you know from the classes that that person taught. For example, if there is a separate lecturer and a separate person to lead the tutorials, but the exam is prepared by the person who led the tutorials, the exam tasks will probably be more similar to what you encountered during tutorial. And finally, if you don't have access to the old papers, if you don't have access to other students who did a course, or it is a completely brand new course and exam, or if you don't have any specific notes from the tutorial or the lecture, then you may trust the exam requirements given by the examiner. And I'm not saying that you should ignore these exam requirements. I'm just saying that you should take them with a grain of salt, because other sources of information are probably more accurate. And the third myth that seems so plausible, yet in my opinion is completely false, is the belief that you should start writing the exam with the easiest tasks first. Let me explain what I mean by this, that you should start with the hardest tasks instead. In her great book, The Mind for Numbers, Barbara Oakley has explained how passive and active modes of the mind work. An active mode is a mode in which you read the assignment and you try to solve it on the go. Whereas the passive mode is something that happens when you leave that task. And I believe that you may have experienced something like this, that you, for example, couldn't remember a certain word or how an actor from a movie was called, and then during a shower or waking up the other day, you realize, okay, now I can remember, now I can tell what this word was, what this actor was. And the same thing may happen during an exam. So basically, if you start with the hardest task first, you most probably won't be able to do it right away. But if you then work through the exercises that you are able to do and at the end go back to the hard exercise, you may experience that you know the answer to that task, because your brain was passively processing this task in the background. So if you took the easiest tasks first and left the hardest task for the end, you would deprive yourself of this time for passive rethinking of the problem in the background. And I would also not trust this advice right away, be it not that I tested it myself and I was completely blown away that it's completely true. It is for me. So I know that time management during an exam is a difficult thing, but please give it a try. Start with the hardest tasks first, then do the tasks that you know that you can do, and go back to the hardest task at the end of the exam. Okay, these were the 3 myths, and now is the time for the bonus. But before we go into that, I would like to ask you that if you're interested in the topics concerning productivity, study tips, and succeeding at a university, then please subscribe to my channel, hit the thumbs up and turn on notifications, because more and more content will be produced on exactly this topic. Okay, and now it's the time for the bonus. And the bonus is the 4th myth that I would say is just beyond those 3 and stops many students from getting the top grade for an exam. And this myth, this belief, is that you can learn for an exam overnight. And I'm not saying that it's not entirely possible to pass an exam when you learn for it overnight, but I don't think I ever met anyone who only learned during one night before the exam and then obtained the best possible grade. Whereas if these people would take this night before the exam, the same amount of time, and would spread it over a much longer period, they would obtain much better results. Why? Because of this also active and passive way of thinking, if your brain has longer time to process the learned information, it can memorize it better. And when we are sleeping, our mind is subconsciously reorganizing the information that we learn during the day. So when you start a few days earlier than the exam, you give yourself this few nights of sleep, and thanks to this, your brain can then memorize and access this information more easily. So what is the optimal time to start studying for an exam? Well, I would say that in an ideal case, it's 2 weeks before the exam. But please don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that you have to study 8 hours a day for 2 weeks. That's not the case. 1 hour, 2 hours is sometimes enough. If you're really deprived of time, and I know I've been there, 3 days before an exam should suffice if you get yourself together and start putting the work, start learning. I believe that you can always start studying earlier. And that's my wish for you for the end of this video. So what do you think? Do you agree with these 4 myths or do you disagree? Please let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.